Hello everyone, we'll be starting shortly. Have a esports demo today. Okay, and we'll be starting in just a moment here. To everyone that joined on our multiple streaming platforms, hello and welcome. Thank you for taking the time today as part of our NAB New York content. So today we're going to talk about using the V-8HD video switchers in Esports Broadcast Controller. So I'm going to do an overhead demo and also have some slides and some other information today. So here you can see I have my V8 already set up for a esports competition, and there's a number of features and customizations on the V8HD that you can use to help manage your production. So the idea is that esports production needs a lot of technical know-how and creative production tools. V8HD is excellent for this application. It can be done all in the box in a piece of hardware. Still images, up to 8 HDMI inputs, multiple picture-in-picture configurations. Kind of going along with that theme of single operator solutions. So as production resumes, you might need smaller, more controlled production. So single operator solutions, there's tools in the V8HD to help make your life easier in creating this content. And of course, hassle-free I/O. So there are input scalers on inputs 7 and 8 on the V8HD to help bring in sources that do not match your resolution. I'll take a moment to kind of go over what that means. So in this case, if say you have an older camera or a computer that is not outputting 1080p resolution, you can bring it into inputs 7 and 8 on the V8HD, and you can take advantage of the scalers, which automatically resize the video to match the output format. So if you're not familiar, this is our V8HD video switcher. It has 8 HDMI inputs, including those two just mentioned scalers on inputs 7 and 8, and 3 outputs. So output 3 would be the multi-view with the menu, and that's built into the LCD screen that you can see right there, and then 2 assignable outputs as well. And you have foot switch control, analog audio in and out, so you can bring in an external audio mixer as a line source via RCA. You can use that USB memory to import still images, and then there's also a USB remote port which utilizes an iPad and then also the Apple Wi-Fi camera adapter. So I'm going to show you this adapter right here. That's the Lightning on one end, USB on the other, and then a USB 2.0 connection to an iPad. So I'm going to be using this as part of the demo as well. There's some great features in it to help manage your esports production, and you just connect it to that trapezoidal shaped remote port on the back of the V8HD. So as I get that connected, I just open the app, and connection is really simple. Once it has detects the signal, you can just press the connect button and you are synchronized with the V8. So just you can kind of see, and we're going to cover this interface as well in more depth as we kind of progress in this demo. But I like using this as a tool to help manage my production because there's a few key sections of it that will make your life easier, especially when you're recalling presets. So I'm going to just bring this up right here. So you can see this is the main screen on the app. And I already have my preset memories named, and I also have my sources named, and they appear here. The audio mixer, everything's named here as well. And then on the preset section, and this is with the latest version 1.10, so 1.10 update, you can name these presets and see visually which sources and what the pips look like, as well as the downstream keyer. So this is very helpful for managing your production. And with this adapter, I just run the iPad in airplane mode, and I have full connectivity to control this V-8HD. And with the update, you can also do up to 24 presets. I'm only using 8 in this demo, but you have multiple banks that you can access if you want the visual view as well. So a very flexible extension to the to your production controller. So next, we're going to go back to some of the key features about V-8HD in relation to an esports application. So the 5-layer effects engine is going to give you flexibility to create more visual production, because you have 2 picture-in-picture layers that can be keyed as a graphic source. And then you have a DSK, which is a top downstream keyer layer for graphics. And I have a diagram in the next slide that will help explain this a bit more. And so these are flexible picture-in-picture. So these picture-in-picture windows can be resized and cropped and however you need them to be. And customizable preset recalls. So you can switch using the preset memories, as I was kind of showing you in that preset memory screen there, to change the settings for your production, and basically do more visual switching. As I'm going to kind of show you, I'm going to walk you through these presets that I created. So I'm going to kind of deconstruct my workflow a bit, so to speak, and show you how it kind of all comes together with like the raw elements. And there's a couple additional, so the preset memories are a huge part of this workflow. Another thing is effects transitions, and this is a new feature that was added to firmware 1.10. So this helps create seamless layout changes. And with that, you're able to basically use the T-bar or the auto transition button to swap the picture-in-picture and DSK layers back and forth between program and preview. And if you're not familiar with that workflow, it may take a moment to kind of get understand the concept and apply it. So I'm going to break it down and kind of walk you through how and why I'm using it and how to kind of set it up in the context of the V-8HD. So let's just take a look at that 5-layer effects engine diagram, just to kind of help visually explain it. Is that the first 2 layers are going to be program, and then whatever source you transition with a preset. So going back to this demo here. Now, again, this is the multi-view output 3, and this is program output 1. So this is what is going out to the audience in this esports production that I have here. And if I do a transition, maybe I want to go from camera 5 to camera 6. So I cue this up in preview, and I do my transition. And notice that the layers on top are not affected. So I'm going between cameras 5 and 6, or I can go between 5 and 7. And I can have these kind of camera shots fill that top half of the screen. And I have 2 picture-in-picture windows with gameplay footage. And then so these are the picture-in-pictures. And then this is the downstream keyer, where I have our fictional Pro AV Invitational. So those are the 5 layers. And another thing too is I'm going to mess up this preset just to kind of illustrate something, is briefly just going back to the slide too. The next 2 layers in this engine is the picture-in-pictures. And when we say pip and key, we mean that you can even add a chroma key or luma key to that picture-in-picture window. So, in workflows outside of esports, maybe you need 3 graphics layers, and you can do the chroma keyer for those graphic layers and have them be HDMI or a still image, and you can have 3 transparent overlays on top of your video. In this case, I'm using the picture-in-pictures for video sources. It's going to be either the competitors or their gameplay footage. But the idea is that these picture-in-pictures reside on top of the program video, which is on top of the preview video, except when you do a transition, it'll switch between the 2 sources, whether it's a cut or a dissolve. Now, if I moved this picture-in-picture, you'll notice that in that layer stack, that picture-in-picture 2 is on top of picture-in-picture 1. So this is a fixed layer order on the V8HD, so just keep that in mind when you're designing your layouts. The idea is that picture-in-picture 2 is going to be on top. Now, I'm using the quick controls here to move these around just to kind of demonstrate the layer order. So obviously this wouldn't be my layout, but just so you understand is that layer 3 is that picture-in-picture 1, that blue box. Picture-in-picture 2 is the red box, and then the DSK is the top layer, layer number 5. So I'm just going to reset this preset back to where it was before. So that essentially is the layer stack for the 5-layer effects engine. So we're going to kind of dive into this diagram a bit. There's 2 components to it. We're going to primarily focus on the video component, but we'll touch on audio a bit as well. So the idea is that, in a workflow, you're going to have get the game footage. So, whether it's the, gamer's PC and then cameras, and those are going to be mixed together with possibly even visuals or, HDMI graphic sources. But you can also import up to 8 still images. And those still images, I have them all stored internally, but none of them are showing. So if you look at my multi-viewer, you're going to see that only crosspoint number 8 has one of the still images in it. So just to kind of, I'm going to use the app just to kind of walk you through my stills. So the idea is that in the app, you can go to this leftmost screen and do still image output, and it'll directly output the still. So these are the different graphics that I created for this demo. So there's one, for the blue team wins, the red team wins, something related to the game, so just some, I made those in presentation software and gave them a green background so that the chroma keyer can remove the green and give you a transparent overlay. And you'll see I have presets for them. Like, this is, if I turn this still off, you can see that's my blue wins. And then we can go back to, gameplay, for example. And then I have some corner logos that I created. And then I have some full screen graphics. So I can go between different sources. And I'll show you how this all kind of comes, I'll show you how that all kind of comes together by mixing them in with the different presets. So when you recall a preset, you can have the DSK pull from a different still image source or an HDMI source and kind of create different sort of little graphic bumpers to help make your content more visual. So those sources all go in. You have your multi-view output. If you want to see HDMI the screen on a larger display, you can use HDMI output 3. Maybe I'm using HDMI output 2 for the aux out to send stuff into in-house displays. And then program would go to the streaming computer. And so, in this example, we're using our UVC01 capture device that is available as part of the V-8HD STR bundle going to the streaming PC. And for audio, you maybe have an audio mixer coming in RCA. You have the hosts, the commentators. You have mics on the players themselves. But the game footage might, that audio is probably coming in HDMI. You might split it off to your audio mixer if you have someone handling all the audio. But there's a number of things you can do with embedded audio and mixing on the V8HD. So we're going to touch on that a bit as well. So you can see here again, this is the audio mixer. I still have access to my preset memories, but then I have all these audio controls available to me. And I can even have presets. I can even have these presets recall different groups of audio settings, or I can just lock it off and keep them all the same. So the nice thing about the presets is you can make them as flexible as you need them to be. And it gets, we'll get into that in a bit. I'll walk you through that menu and kind of show you the different sections and what the reasoning is behind, not recalling certain groups of settings. And so, yeah, so the audio workflow, the iPad app is a great companion for that, especially because you have a touch screen audio mixer for quickly adjusting embedded audio levels or muting channels. So I think at this point, we're going to shift focus away from the slides. And I have some tips at the end, too, that I want to just show you to kind of refresh on some of these points that we're going to cover with this testing and setup. So here I have a wide shot. So I have 5 selected. And one of the key things I'm doing, we might as well just start with the preset memory menu. So I was talking about not recalling certain sections of the menu. So the idea is when I recall a preset, you can have it fade in and out the sources. So the picture-in-pictures and the downstream keyer, I have a fade transition set for them. But in this case, I don't have it going to a particular video cross point, and it can be, really can be up to you as how you want to, utilize it. So the idea is that if you were to turn this on and recall it, then you can have it, transition to that source and then transition in. But if you want to have absolute control over which source is the full screen layer 2 program at all times, I have this turned off for this demo, but depending on your switching style and your workflow, you may want the presets to change your input for you, and it will dissolve, as you saw when I had it turned on there. But maybe you want it to be fixed and you want to manually control that. So you have the option of turning the video cross point change on or off. And note too that when you store a memory preset, and to store a preset, you just press and hold any of these buttons when they're blue. So it's a memory mode. When you store a preset, all the parameters are going to be saved with that preset. But the idea is that when it's time to recall it, if it's locked off, it won't change those settings when you recall it. So the cross point at the time it was saved, so the selection for these 2 rows is stored no matter what, but it's only recalled if this is on. So I have this turned off, and then depending on your audio workflow, you might want audio input turned off as well, so that all your presets, are not affecting the audio mutes and levels and things like that. You can also kind of set that for audio follows video. That automates your channel mutes. So audio follows is helpful if you only want a source so if you have an HDMI source, you only want the audio to be active when it's either on program or in a picture-in-picture window on program. So if that's the case, then the audio will enter the mix. Otherwise, it's muted. So that can be helpful if you have certain audio feeds that are connected via HDMI, and you only want them to be active when they're showing. So that really kind of helps. With a single operator workflow, it's one less thing to worry about. You're not hitting mute manually every time. Again, though, if you have an audio mixer on the production that's already managing the game audio feeds and the competitors and any commentators, then they might already be handling all that for you. So, but just keep it in mind that there are these automation tools to help you bring in more of the production when you need to handle it yourself. So another tip, kind of trick, is that if maybe I want to take the same audio settings from my mixer and kind of save it across all the presets. What I might do is I'll turn off audio input, then I'll recall. I can keep this menu open too, I can recall each individual preset. So like I recall this one, and then these audio settings are not affected, but I want to write these audio settings to every preset, all 8 of them. So the idea is you can recall a preset and then push and hold to overwrite the same preset, and then these are preset, and then so on. And then you can kind of do that, then recall 2 and then overwrite it. So you can kind of get the same audio settings on every preset. And then if you need to make little changes or adjustments, recall, make the change or adjustment, then save it. And then the idea is that when you turn this back on, you can recall different groups of audio settings. So that might have sounded a little confusing, but the basic idea is that if you want to kind of copy certain settings to different presets, you can just turn off the load parameter and then do a recall and overwrite for everything to kind of get the same audio settings written to all those presets. Or you can just keep this, and that's if you intended to turn this back on and, maybe do some different audio preset configurations, as well. I believe, I have different, you can see for these different ones, I have different mutes assigned to them. You can have different follow settings. So you have a lot of, flexibility with how you want to do it. And you may be looking up at the screen right now and seeing, okay, these are the different presets that I created for, this demo. So you can see, as I'm changing my preset memories, there's, I have 5 through 8 I use for graphics for, saying that, player 1 and, those different gameplay graphics. And then I can go back to, the gameplay view. So I'm gonna kind of dive into these presets a little more. The next kind of piece of the setup puzzle that I want to discuss too is the effects transition sync, a new feature in version 1.10. And with the effects transition sync, what you do is you go into this menu. I have them turned on for all 3 layers. So what happens now when these are turned on? This is a new feature, and it's a powerful way to kind of help manage transitions between program and preview. So it may seem a little complex at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's a valuable tool for just bringing in doing transitions. If, for example, if I have this here, let me see. What I want to do is I'm going to do it with preset 2. So notice that you have 2 buttons for each effect layer. So you have on is for program, and then green is for preview. So in turn, you see on my multi-viewer that I have, on my multi-viewer, I have those layers on program and preview. If I turn off if I press those 3 green preview buttons, those all go away. Now, what's going to happen when I do a transition is these are going to swap positions. So watch here as I press auto, and they all go to preview, all 3 layers. And then I do it again, and then they fade in. Now notice that the full screen program layer doesn't change because both input 5, camera 5 is selected for both program and preview. So the idea is that no matter what I do, whether it's a cut or a dissolve, it's going to swap positions. Now, if I turn preview off for one of these and do it again, notice that it wasn't active on preview, so nothing's happening. Or if it's active on both program and preview, it'll stay up indefinitely until I disable one of the 2 options. So pretty straightforward for swapping the key layers. Just understand the relationship is that if neither is lit, nothing will happen. If one is lit, it'll swap positions. And if both are lit, it'll stay on at all times. So the idea is that you can kind of use that to your advantage to sort of bring in, say, I want to bring in this competition logo. I turn off the 3 previews and we go to this. So we're going back to that, kind of like a splash screen, a still image. And I'll show you another little trick that I can kind of do here is in the iPad app, if I go to input assign, I can change and because these are nearly identical graphics, it looks like I'm advancing a slide. And you could use an HDMI input for that. You can have, presentation software feeding the graphics, and you can kind of cycle through them in that software. These are just imported still images. And I just wanted to show that I can do a cut transition between two stills using this input assign menu. I'm going to take a moment to get some water. Sorry about that. So next, I've been on the screen for a bit, and maybe now I want to transition back to the competition, to the gameplay. So maybe I'm going to queue up some game footage now, and when I do this transition, it's going to bring these over from preview to program. So I do my transition here, and now all of a sudden we have this kind of head-to-head view. Now, maybe I want to show both of their feeds. So I'm going to show you the split effect, and this is a pretty useful tool as well. So if I queue up the other gameplay shot in preview and then do split, you can see all of a sudden that I can do a horizontal split or a vertical split of their gameplay feeds. And this might work for your content. So then you still have this picture-in-picture view where the two competitors are going head-to-head. And then maybe at that point, one of them wins. So I can do something like this, and it says, okay, blue wins. And then I go back to the competition. And so back to the competition view. Or maybe, and the idea too is that maybe you're going to do, you could do something like that. And then notice that when I called this preset up for blue wins, it then set up the picture-in-pictures up top in preview so that I can transition. Now, this is no longer the corner logo. This is this blue wins overlay. But when I do a transition, I can kind of go back to a competition view temporarily, and then kind of set up my next preset. So maybe I want to go back to this gameplay view. Now, before you do that though, so the idea is I have these cross points turned off. So you can see I'm kind of making, some mistakes. I haven't done my technical run yet for this production, kind of thing. So it's just like, once you have a sense of how the workflow comes together, you're going to make certain transitions before you recall a preset. So, if I'm in this, blue wins situation and I have the two players up on the screen, maybe I want to queue up, number 5 and then go to there and then recall the competition view. So the idea is like, I'm going back to my wide shot and then I'm going to bring in the next preset. Another little customization that you may have been noticing, and I've mentioned before, is that you can customize the color of the picture-in-picture windows for the border in the picture-in-picture menu. So you go in there, and then on the second page, you have the border color and width. So did a simple blue team, red team, setup for this to help distinguish, which box is which player. Now, note you do have a maximum of 2 picture-in-picture windows on the V-8HD, so it's going to be either gameplay or the game players. Another thing you can do too is that you can set the picture-in-picture source using the mode buttons. You can get out of recalling presets, and you want to put switch the picture-in-picture window source. You can do something like that. Now, granted, that is one at a time. So, more realistically, I might do is like recall preset 3, where I have like a larger view here. And maybe what I'm going to then do is I want to change, the source in this box to show you the other player that he's, competing against. So, you have some flexibility with changing the pip source there, but largely for my workflow, I kept everything to sort of work around these presets. So the idea is that I have this shot, and you get the wide of the competition view. And notice I have this preset set up so that these are both active. And if I want to change my shot, I can do that. And but then maybe, okay, I wanted to show this shot, but I don't need the gameplay footage, so I'm going to transition it out. So I took them off a preview, and the effects transition feature swapped them out. And so I have that clean view there. It's a good shot. I like it. And then I'm going to go back to the competition view. And then, maybe it's like, okay, now I'm going to follow the red team. And so I could do something like this. And then say, okay, wait, but the announcer's, talking about this play, and I can have some flexibility with the elements that I want to keep. Maybe I want to keep, pip 1 in this and keep the logo. So I turn those on in preview. I do my transition, and there's the announcer speaking, but I also have sort of kept the same view so that I can come right back to it with another transition. And I can go back, I have that wide shot just to kind of like a visual fill, just to kind of, give it a dynamic look. And then maybe I want to bring up the competition graphic again. So I'm going to cue those out of preview and go back to my graphic there. And then from there, maybe I want to just go back to the wide and then recall preset number 1, which is going to call up the gameplay footage in the dual picture-in-picture. So now, note though, when I'm in this preset, I don't want to press auto again, because notice I have 8 in preview, so that would just bring that graphic up, and you're not going to want that look during your production. So the idea is that I'm using a combination of calling up a preset, making sure that my elements are in place here, and then recalling the preset or doing the transition that's going to give me the next, multi-layer look that I want. Now, keep in mind that I'm kind of giving myself more control here. And so, I have to be mindful of my selections. Now, you can automate this more. Just to kind of review that point, we're going to go into that preset memory menu, and you can write these cross-point selections with the preset, turn it on, and have the V-8HD recall those inputs with a mix dissolve. But so you could pretty much entirely run your production off of just these presets. But as I hope this is explaining, is that you can give yourself more control. And I think that's something to be mindful of during production, is like you have these tools to help line everything up for you, but still have a process where you're being mindful of the layouts and the shots that you're calling up. So you're not totally relying entirely on these presets. You're still giving yourself some control and direction over the visual design of this production. So really it's kind of using a combination of tools and features on the V-8HD to kind of drive all that. So another thing too is that you notice that I had just about everything named here, right? So I had the still images named, I had the inputs named, and I also have my preset memories named. So you can do all of this in the menu. You could do it here, and you just use the value knob to select your letters. But again, if you have the iPad app, this can make things a lot more streamlined, where you can just name all the inputs. So you can go to menu. I'll just walk you through this briefly. So you just press the setup button for the menu. You go to system, and then scroll to multi-view label edit, and you can name the HDMIs and still images, as well as the outputs too. You can customize the naming of those. And then for the preset memories, those I named as well in the preset memory menu. You can go to name edit up here, and you can see that there are 24 memories available. But for this demo, I am just doing 8. So you can see those all right there, and then those in turn appear here, just as kind of a helpful reference. So I have picture-in-picture gameplay, picture-in-picture players, blues gameplay, Red's gameplay, so utilizing the dual pip. And notice that even you might not see it 100% on this iPad app, but off the camera here, but you can see that the border color is represented as well. As you can see, it's the blue border, that's blue PC, red PC, and then the DSK is that angled in the lower right corner, that blue. So it tells you, okay, you have logo A is your graphic. So, this graphic is on those 4. And then these are like blue win, red win, perfect run, close call. So it's, these stills here that are utilized in, each of those downstream keys. So it's like, okay, during production, I could have the screen up and I have a visual representation of what each preset is going to recall and position. I mean, you can see the size and position of the pips. It's a very helpful visual tool. And so, okay, Red's playing. It's like, okay, Red wins. I can just do that. And then notice too is that I still have their picture-in-pictures in the transition as well. So maybe if I did something like this, I could even, bring in the pip or have the pips of both at the ready. So, I mean, I could resave this preset so that these are ready to come, right in and, get their reaction to, Red winning, for example. So, it's kind of a process of discovery, seeing how these presets line up for you. And so, with that, it's kind of like you're kind of building it out, start simple, like have a clearly defined, group of presets, and then kind of lay the groundwork, and you're going to probably make adjustments and overwrite them. So again, too, just to review, if you ever need to adjust an existing preset, recall it first, make your changes, and then overwrite it again by pressing and holding. And then, because you might go through 2 or 3 revisions, kind of building out these presets and then kind of playing with the, how the transitions are going to work with it and what's going to give you the, the most streamlined production control. It's probably not going to all come together on the, version 1.0 of your layout. So, keep that in mind as you're sort of building these out, because also in this process, it's you're storing and recalling. You're recalling and storing settings. So you have to, keep in mind that, it may help to just have like a default kind of layout for picture-in-picture, save it to, these first 4, and then modify 2, 3, and 4 so you have slight variations of the same visual thing. So, that was kind of the general sort of idea where it's like I kept, these picture-in-picture borders. So I created this, then I saved it to, number 2 as well. But then I was like, I don't want these to be gameplay footage. So I'm going to change them. I'm going to change the picture-in-picture source to, instead of gameplay footage, it's going to be the player. So I already had the groundwork laid out. And then, I was like, I want these picture-in-picture windows to be a little different. I want to crop them. So again, I can go into the picture-in-picture settings in the menu. You have the 2 picture-in-picture options, and I went to say the horizontal cropping, because otherwise it's going to be like that, and it takes up a lot of space on the screen. You just need a portrait view of the player. So again, that preset was stored where I just made it 40% instead of 100%. So another thing too is that as you're adjusting a setting, here's a little trick. That notice it's moving in 0.1% increments. If you want it to move much faster, push and hold and twist. And this also extends to the quick controls as well. There's some functionality with, so if you're moving it, it moves up and down. But if you push and twist, you unlock the size and zoom controls. So you can make the window bigger, you can zoom in on it. So these tools are helpful for kind of quickly dialing in a picture-in-picture without diving too deep into the menu. But if you want to crop it, you're going to do it via the menu here, and then if you do the push and twist, you can bring it down to quickly bring it down in 10% increments. So again, going back to the whole workflow and logic, I was kind of building it up. So I kind of created this base preset, and then I started building it out from there. So the idea is that I have this here, and then I go to gameplay footage, and these are active on both on and preview. So now I have the gameplay footage here, and maybe I can go between the two game feeds. So I can do that. Maybe I want to lose the graphics. I just turn them both off, and I'm just switching here because maybe I don't want the graphic on all the time, for example. And then I say, okay, I want to just go to, the individual players. And then so I can do something like that. Now at that point, I wanted to, before I had done that, I want to bring this in. So I want to go back to the wide, and then there's my gameplay footage and the individual players. I can go back and forth that way as well. So again, this is a powerful tool. It's flexible with the overlays. You can see I'm able to kind of create a more visually dynamic production. And then maybe too, it's like, okay, I want to go to the announcer. I want to keep the corner logo up, and so then I can do something like that, like I was doing earlier, and then go back. Or if you want to keep the first picture-in-picture on with the view of the player, you can see press preview, there pops up, and I can do the transition and keep it up. So I did this one earlier, but this is again just to kind of show you, the process and the flow and what I'm utilizing to go back and forth, but also preserve different combinations of overlays. And then okay, we get to a point, okay, red team won, so I'm going to call number 6. So red wins, and then maybe I'm going to go back to 2, and then back to the gameplay footage. So then I have that there. Again too, maybe this is where I want to do the the split mode. So again, before you turn on split, notice that I didn't have the source selected. So when you go to split, make sure that your 2 sources are selected, and then you can then enable it, and you have the split view. And then you can disable it, go back to gameplay, and then maybe you want to transition back to the wide, or maybe you want to show a brief shot of the gameplay in the arena. So I'm going to turn off preview here so that the picture-in-picture windows go off, and then there I have my view right there. And then I can go back to the gameplay with the picture-in-pictures. So you have a lot of flexibility with, maybe you want this logo to go away, and then you want it to come back on the transition. So maybe you just want the corner logo for the DSK only active on these shots, for example. So, and also notice too that you can do the same transitions with the T-bar. I'm just using the auto button. You can set the transition time for the auto button here, as well as the picture-in-pictures. So if you want them to have different recall times, you can establish that in this menu. And then two is that the fade time for the preset memory is separate here. So you can set that for the 4 layers, and I have it down to a half second there, for example. And you can also lock off those transition time settings in the transition menu if you don't want that previous menu that showed you to be affected by these recalls. So I'm going to take a moment just to review a couple tips that, and then I'll take a moment to see if there's any questions as well. There was a question too, is there XLR inputs on the V-8HD? It's just RCA input only plus embedded audio from the HDMI sources. But two, before we jump into those tips, I want to show you that the HDMI sources, there's a lot you can do with the audio. So you have effect presets where you can kind of, dial in a preset setting for your EQ and compressor. You have a high pass filter and noise gate, the compressor, equalizer. So there's a lot you can do with that HDMI audio, and you can also send it out via RCA if you want to give all the HDMI audio to the audio mixer to mix with the microphones that are connected to that mixer, for example. And then for the RCA in, you have similar controls as well for high pass filter, noise gate, compressor, and EQ. On the audio output, you can assign either a main output or an aux audio out. So you have some aux sends that you can do post fader sends of a source to an alternate output if you want to give separate sources for audio to mix. On the output, you can apply a limiter, a EQ for the bus, or a multi-band compressor for the bus as well. So you have some flexibility to sweeten the audio that's coming out of these HDMI outputs and help bring up the loudness for a web presentation or mix. So even though there's no XLR inputs or preamps on the V-8HD, there's a lot of audio processing and flexibility to help sweeten the sound of any microphone that's connected to a camera that you want to utilize. You have the mixer in the app for controlling that and dialing in your audio settings. And obviously too, you can just easily adjust the levels using the sliders and choose which feed's muted, whether it has audio follows enabled for it. So you have a lot of flexibility with using this with an external audio system or trying to bring in as much as possible to do the mixing in the box. And so the iPad app is a great tool for that. And again, it just needs a Apple Wi-Fi camera adapter to convert from Lightning to USB. So I'll take a moment to review some tips here. So think about preset memories like macros. You can transition the picture-in-picture and downstream keyer with these preset memories. And you can also choose which groups of settings are affected. For example, you can lock the downstream keyer settings so they're not affected by recalls. And just going back to the demo, just to review that, you can see also some of the settings that you might not want impacted are the video input settings, which I believe are disabled by default. But the video crosspoint, that was one that I made a case for where disabling the video crosspoint can give you more control over which source is set to program. So again, that second layer that's underneath the picture-in-picture and underneath the downstream keyer. I want more control choosing that source and doing transitions back and forth. Maybe I don't want the preset memory to recall it for me, but maybe it works for your workflow. So, really there's no preferred way or better way. It's really what best suits your workflow. And then the audio input settings, you might have that disabled so it's not affected by preset recalls and you have the same audio settings at all times. But also maybe you want it to control which channels are muted and have different configurations based on a particular preset. Again, that depends on how complex your audio setup and workflow is. And so it may be a matter of personal preference or requirements for the event. And the next one is the effects transition sync. So, simply enough, this feature lets you completely swap preview and program. I was kind of giving you multiple examples of how that functions. So, again, is that if you do a transition, I'm going to go between, these two sources. Notice that if only one is selected, it'll swap positions. If they're both selected, it'll stay on. And if neither is selected, it will stay off. But notice that these two are swapping because only one is lit, so it's going to the other one. And you can always also manually control it, so you can dissolve it in and out. You can manually bring in all three yourself. You maybe set them up on preview like this if you want. And, maybe you have this queued up and you want it to go there like that. Or more realistically, you probably turn off the corner bug in preview because that's a very similar graphic. And I do the transition, and there I go, and I still have the head-to-head competition view. So it's a powerful tool. It's in that version 1.10 update. It's a new feature, and it's a helpful way of managing the layer transitions. And also, audio follows video, which is going to help make sure that your HDMI audio is muted when it's not visible on program, either as the program source selection or in a picture-in-picture window. So that's a helpful automation tool. And another one that I want to bring up too is the auto switching. So there is in the menu an auto switching feature. And what that allows you to do is you can do input scan. So you can go sequentially, reverse, random. You can choose how long it's going to stay on each shot. And then you can also just like, if I don't have anything connected to input number 8, I'm going to turn that to off. So that won't be part of the auto switching. And then I have a nice shortcut button to access when I want to switch between the sources. And so, yeah, I have 7 sources here. So, realistically, I have these set and they're all 5 seconds and then, 1 second transition between them. And so, if I turn these layers off, then, I can turn this on and then all of a sudden it will then go through the different shots. And then maybe I want it to be random, so I can just do that. Maybe I want a shorter transition time. I'll just do that. Maybe I don't want 5 seconds. Maybe I want 5 seconds for the gameplay footage, but only 3 seconds for the game players. So you can kind of customize this however you want it to be and go between the sources. You can also take it a step further and try preset memory scan, which you can use to go between the different presets. So note too that you're going to have these, you're going to want to, I'm only using 8, so you would go through these and disable them, so forth, turn off those, and just have 1 through 8 available for this. And you can do a random scan sequence, and it can call these different presets at random. Now, if that's the case, you probably want the video crosspoint enabled in the preset memory menu, because then that way it will change the program source as well. So, in a sense, if you need to temporarily or fully automate the production, you can turn this on. And if you need to get up and focus on adjusting a camera or some other production element, you can kind of let the switcher take over for a bit and, at random or in sequence, go through, a certain group of presets. So, this is another, powerful tool to kind of help with production automation. And then final tip is to, you can recall presets with the remote app. So with that iPad app, you can label your presets and then also get a visual layout of the sources for easy identification. So here you can see on that leftmost screen in the iPad app, I have access to all the preset memories. I can do 8 or all 24 on one screen and then cycle between different groups of 8. So I have them all labeled and named and visually identifiable, and I'm able to recall these different kind of preset configurations for going between that and then the gameplay footage. So it's a helpful way to sort of take some of the guesswork out of like, oh wait, which one am I going to next? And it's like, I got them named, I have them visually identifiable. So this iPad app, it's a free app. You just need that adapter cable, and it's a powerful addition to this workflow. So I'm going to take a moment and see if there's any additional questions. And so I want to thank you all for joining for this presentation. And if you do have any additional questions, just contact us at Roland Product Support, and happy to answer them for you. Thank you again, and take care.